All right, Susan, where are you from? I'm from Blackburn, which is in West Lothian, close to Bathgate. The town is large. It's somewhat of a compilation of, it is a group of villages. In 2022, Susan Boyle experienced a horrific incident that left her missing for 2 years. She was concealing more than just that secret, though. For years, she had been torn apart by her own family over money. Even threats were made by one brother, left Susan feeling ill with anxiety. Her decision to provide 1.8 million to family members only made matters worse. At 64, Susan has now made a startling reappearance and revealed the truth about what actually transpired during those troubled years. On April 1, 1961, Susan Boyle was born at Bangor Village Hospital in West Lothian, Scotland. She came from a working-class family and was the youngest and ninth child. Bridget, her mother, gave birth at the age of 47, a dangerous age to become pregnant, particularly at that age. Physicians cautioned that the baby's birth could put the mother and kid in danger. However, Bridget, a devoted Catholic, would not entertain the idea of terminating the pregnancy. The Boyles resided in a modest Blackburn home, and the arrival of Susan put additional strain on a family that was already having financial difficulties. Susan was the odd one out from the beginning, laying the groundwork for many of the challenges she would encounter. Crisis characterized Susan's early years. At birth, her mother experienced preeclampsia. Susan's oxygen supply was momentarily cut off as a result. Her parents were informed by doctors that she was born with slight cerebral impairment. For years, this label followed her. She was referred to as a slow learner at school. She had trouble keeping up. Teachers were unsure about how to help her. Susan felt as though she didn't belong after peers made fun of her. For the majority of her life, she was plagued by the thought that she was damaged, nor was home a safe place. Patrick, her father, served during World War II. He was deeply scarred by the conflict. He was unstable and furious when he got home. Fear gripped the Boyle home, which was already tight and impoverished. Her father's violent outbursts frequently targeted Susan. She suffered psychologically as much as physically. Susan thereafter claimed to adore her father, despite the fact that she thought he battled uncontrollable demons. However, the harm influenced her self-perception and made it difficult for her to have faith in other people. There was no escape from school. Susan was harassed every day. Her peers thought her fainting episodes amusing due to her epilepsy. They called her derogatory names like Touchy and Susie Simple. Teachers were of no assistance. Rather, they struck her with a belt, sometimes nearly daily. Susan experienced hurt, smallness, and forgetfulness. Nevertheless, in spite of everything, this challenging upbringing gave her an inner resilience that nobody anticipated. For over half a century, Susan endured a distressing miscommunication. From birth, everyone thought she had cerebral problems. She was viewed as less capable by her family, friends, and teachers. Susan saw a specialist in 2012 when she was 51 years old. She was horrified to learn the truth. She had an above-average IQ and Asperger's syndrome, a type of autism. The previous label was incorrect. Her difficulties were finally explained by this new insight. She felt proud and relieved. For the first time, Susan was able to see herself honestly and without shame. Susan first experienced love at the age of 25. However, her father intervened and demolished it. Patrick broke up with Susan without telling her. One day he picked up the phone and informed the man that she didn't want to talk to him. The man and another person soon had a child together. Susan's heart ached. That pain stayed with her forever. It permanently altered her perspective on trust and love. Susan remained behind as her 8 siblings left and started their own lives. She took on the role of caregiver for her elderly parents. She dedicated herself to her mother until Bridget's death at age 91, following the death of her father in the 1990s. Susan's entire world shrank. She seldom ever saw her buddies. To take care of her family, she sacrificed her own aspirations. Susan felt stuck while her siblings established families and professions. She bravely tried out for the television program My Kind of People in 1995. Although Susan had performed in local choirs and pubs, this was her first opportunity to gain national recognition. There was too much nerves. She could hardly sing because of how much she shook. She failed to appear on television. She was devastated by the rejection, but clinging to her ideal, she continued to sing at home and in public. Susan recorded the song Cry Me a River for a charity CD in 1999. There were just 1,000 copies produced. Her performance was described as devastating by the local daily, which also commended her voice. Outside of West Lothian, however, hardly anyone heard it. Her gift would remain hidden from the world, till 10 years later. Susan used all of her savings to create a professional demo tape that same year. She recorded Killing Me Softly with his song and Cry Me a River. She sent the tapes to TV stations and record labels all around the United Kingdom. Nobody answered. The recordings vanished into thin air. Susan was devastated. No one seemed interested in listening to her. Susan Boyle's world collapsed in 2000. Everything changed when her adored sister Kathleen passed so unexpectedly. Susan's staunchest ally had always been Kathleen. Susan's dreams were crushed when she passed away. Susan had previously been performing in her little town of Blackburn at church functions and smaller venues. She hoped to succeed in the music industry, but Susan stopped once Kathleen left. Didn't want to sing. She didn't perform, take lessons, or even come in contact with anything that made her think of music for 2 years. She shut herself up because she felt so depressed. The emptiness in her heart matched the silence in her life. Susan had always been pressured by Kathleen to share her talent, and suddenly that voice, both her sister's and Susan's own internal voice, was gone. By 2002, Susan had gradually returned to singing, but her world had changed by then. Her attention shifted to Bridget, her mother. Bridget was weak and in her late 80s. Every day she required Susan's care. Thus Susan centered her life on her mother and remained in the modest council home where she had been raised. She prepared food. She did the cleaning. She kept Bridget safe. In exchange, Bridget offered words of encouragement that helped Susan maintain her aspirations. She would remind Susan that she needed to make advantage of her gift. Everything was shared between the two. Although they had a close relationship, it limited Susan's universe. The only thing that kept hope alive as Susan's personal goals receded into the background was her mother's belief in her. Another heartbreak followed. Bridget passed away in October 2007 at the age of 91. It felt like the end of the world for Susan. She had Bridget as her rock and anchor, and now she had lost that rock. Susan was devastated. Her singing ceased. She was rarely out of the house. She lived in grief and silence for over 2 years. Neighbors and friends became concerned. Susan didn't appear to want to do anything anymore. With her mother's death, the dreams she had formerly clung to seemed to disappear. There was just silence and grief in the house that had once been alive with music. Susan turned into a recluse throughout this period. Her entire existence revolved around the small Blackburn house. The curtains remained drawn. She was hardly seen by neighbors. Susan would go days without talking to anyone else. Most of the time she was alone with Pebbles, her cat. She was not a churchgoer. She never went to events. She even lost interest in her appearance. What had once been a loving home turned become a place of grief. Until late 2008, when something inside Susan started to stir, it remained that way. Before she passed away, Susan had promised her mother something. She also made the decision to keep it. In 2008. She would go to Britain's Got Talent to try out. Her age was 47. She had no job. She had never given a concert outside of her hometown. However, none of that was important. She was adamant about following her mother's instructions. She then went to Glasgow for the audition after completing the form. It was horrible. Despite her self-doubt, she went. "I wanted to prove to myself and to everyone else that I could do it," she subsequently stated. Everything changed because of that one bold act and that pledge. It was the beginning of one of the most amazing tales in entertainment history. Nobody took Susan Boyle seriously when she took the stage on April 11, 2009, at Glasgow's Clyde Auditorium. She had untidy hair, wore a simple gold lace dress, and was 47 years old. The audience members rolled their eyes. A few chuckled. Piers Morgan, Amanda Holden and Simon Cowell, the judges, exchanged disbelieving glances. The crowd erupted in derision when Susan declared her desire to achieve Elaine Page's level of fame. People were seen whispering and grinning on camera. Before she even spoke, it seemed like everyone had already determined she would fail. Everything changed when Susan started singing and I Had a Dream About Les Miserables. There was silence in the room. Simon Cowell's mouth fell open. His gaze expanded. Amanda Holden gazed in wonder. Piers Morgan gave a startled smile. The judges transformed from skepticism to awe in a matter of seconds. The audience leaped to their feet when Susan hit the song's most powerful section. The cheers were thunderous. Later Simon claimed that he had never been so taken aback on the show. It turned into a viral success. The video evoked the same sense of wonder in millions of viewers worldwide. That evening's standing ovation extended outside the auditorium. Videos of Susan's audition were widely shared online by the next morning. Over 25 million people viewed it on YouTube in just 1 week. That figure soared above 100 million in 9 days. She was covered by the New York Times, CNN, and the BBC. People all throughout the world have been moved by Susan Boyle's voice. People were reminded that true talent can emerge from anywhere when what began as a single performance in Glasgow turned into a global sensation. Following the song's conclusion, Amanda Holden said something that had an international impact. I genuinely believe that we were all acting quite cynically, and that's the biggest wake-up call ever, she added. That quote was repeated over and over. Everyone was forced to consider how quickly they make judgments about other people, as a reminder that ability knows no bounds, no age, and no appearance. Amanda's remarks became a part of Susan's story. The audition came to represent the dismantling of superficial standards in the entertainment industry. Overnight, Susan's life altered. Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore were among the celebrities who tweeted about her. She was the top trending subject on Twitter by April 13, 2009. 1.5 million people watched her video every hour. She was invited to the Oprah Winfrey Show and made appearances on news programs. She was sought after for interviews by reporters from over 50 nations. In Blackburn, Scotland, even her church became a popular tourist destination. Where she used to sing, people traveled from as far away as Japan to watch her. Susan became a worldwide celebrity in a matter of days. On May 24, 2009, Susan made a comeback for the semi-finals. She sang Memory from Cats this time. The pressure was enormous. The wait was made more difficult by the fact that she was the last performer that evening. However, the magic returned as she began to sing. The crowd applauded. Amanda Holden described it as utterly captivating. That evening Susan received more votes than any other performer. Her initial audition wasn't a stroke of luck, as her performance demonstrated to the world. Susan was the overwhelming favorite prior to the May 30, 2009, final. The odds quoted by bookmakers were as low as 1.66. She was the subject of almost 75% of all bets. By then around 200 million people had watched her audition. Pubs and community centers hosted viewing parties in Blackburn. For the first time the performance was streamed live online due to the overwhelming demand. Everyone thought Susan would prevail, but the nation was taken aback by the outcome when the final ballots were tabulated. Just 20.2% of the 17.3 million viewers cast their ballots for Susan. Diversity, a street dancing ensemble, took first place with 24.9%. People all over the world felt the shock. Even in countries such as Azerbaijan, it was being discussed. On live television, Susan, ever gracious, congratulated Diversity. "The best people won," she remarked. "They're a lot of fun. I hope the best for you boys." However, a lot of viewers were left in shock. Rumors circulated that Susan was furious backstage immediately following the performance. According to other stories, she yelled, "I hate this show," as she ran down the hallways. "I detest it." She hurled water on a floor manager. According to others, it was said that crew members were taken aback. According to several of Susan's close friends and family, the reports were overblown. However, the incident demonstrated the strain she was under, and the difficulties of unexpected celebrity. The United Kingdom awoke to startling news on June 1, 2009, after winning hearts on Britain's Got Talent. 48-year-old Scottish singer Susan Boyle was taken to London's Priory Clinic. This clinic wasn't your typical one. When they required assistance, celebrities and even members of the royal family went there. 19.3 million people had witnessed Susan lose to diversity in the BGT final just the previous evening. She was deeply affected by the loss. She tossed a glass at hotel employees, sobbed and yelled, "I hate the show," before passing out. When paramedics arrived, they brought her to the Priory and reported that she was experiencing emotional breakdown and weariness. Susan was well famous by that point. Over 220 million people had already viewed her audition, making it the fifth most viewed video on YouTube overall. Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister, even wished her a quick recovery. Newspapers ran the story on their top pages, describing it as a cautionary tale about the costs of instant celebrity and reality TV pressures. There was more from the media. They bombarded Susan with incessant tales and inquiries concerning her psychological well-being. According to some stories, it was even deemed inhumane by other journalists. Her family was harassed by reporters who waited outside her house to test